Today on the Big Six in 60, Illinois gets back to the Final Four.
UConn versus Illinois.
Arizona prepares for a matchup with Michigan.
I have believed all season long that Arizona and Michigan are 1A and 1B.
And the Thunder take down the Pistons in overtime.
It was a game that everyone thought was going to be pretty easy for Oklahoma City.
This is the Big Six in 60, the six biggest national sports stories from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big Six in 60 starts now. Thank you for making the Big Six in 60 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Illinois is back in the Final Four for the first time since the Illini made the championship game in 2005. The Illini took down a pair of Big Ten foes in the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. As Brad Underwood prepares for his first Final Four appearance, Sonny Verma tells you everything you need to know on Locked On Illini.
UConn wins by 3 points. Incredible game. And so it looks like it's going to be UConn versus Illinois. Obviously a series that's gone back a few years now. They're familiar foes. They're teams that have played, 3 times in just the last 3 years at this point. And let's be honest, Illinois has kind of been on the short end of the stick in all 3, or at least 2 of the matchups. I'm going to kind of go back through my memories and really refresh what I think of the game. I will be honest. If you have a chance, and I promise I'm going to put this video in the description, go back and take a look at the post-game live from the previous UConn game, which I believe was happening in November 28th of this season. And I tell you to bring that up because it tells you about the highs and lows of this basketball team and this basketball season. I consider myself a pretty optimistic guy, but if you go back and watch that was probably the lowest I've felt for the Brad Underwood era for a while. And legitimately, it's me for 35 minutes questioning that, have we reached the ceiling with Brad? And it's funny because obviously that thought has been echoed amongst a lot of Illini fans throughout, not just this season, but in years past. But I've never really gotten there. And, I always do harp on the fact that these post-game live shows are 24 hours, say what you want, and you're not going to be held accountable for it. And so certainly 24 hours later, I didn't necessarily feel that way. I think my everydayers in here know that I believed in this coaching staff moving forward. And ultimately this March, I guess that belief has been proven correct. But definitely go back, please. I will put the link in the description. It's just kind of a cool way of looking back at history and just kind of why you should appreciate this moment that we're in so much. But what I really wanted to do is, again, we'll quickly recap the 2 games. Of course, we're going to be talking about the matchup in the Elite Eight just a couple of years ago. It was the Terrence Shannon Jr. team, Marcus Damask. Unfortunately, that was a team that was in the top 5 teams in the country, in my opinion, in particular the way that they played at the end. They won the Big Ten tournament. Terrence Shannon Jr. was the all-time scorer in the Big Ten tournament, and I believe he played 1 less game than the previous record holder. It was a team that we all felt really confident for, and we were really hopeful for, especially with the drama that Terrence Shannon Jr. was working with during the middle of that season, and to see him come off of that and this team kind of unite, it was a special feeling. And then at that time, Brad Underwood had never gone to the Sweet 16. And being able to get there, and then you have that stunning victory over Iowa State. We all remember the Terrence Shannon Jr. dunk. It was a great feeling. And then in the Elite Eight, you met up with UConn, and bad things happened. Right, 30-0 happened. A meme was created on that day. So quite simply, you saw some of the downsides of Brad Underwood in that game, in the sense where you understood what the strategy was on the outset. The strategy was take the ball and try to get Donovan Clingan into foul trouble. And they did that over and over and over again. And it did not work over and over and over again. And at some point in the second half, the game was done. It was over. Quite honestly, if we're being real, the game was pretty much over at halftime, if I recall correctly. But, it's it's a game where I don't feel too awful because I really like that basketball team, and I think they were one of the best teams that year. The fact that they only made it to the Elite Eight is because of the competition. That UConn team, I still maintain and believe, was probably the best college basketball team of the last decade or so. I'm sure Arizona and Michigan, they might have an argument if they're able to pull through next weekend themselves. But for me, everything I saw of that UConn team, I could tell that they were very good. Were they as better than Illinois as they showed on that particular day? I wouldn't necessarily say that, but you got to give credit where credit is due. I've always said that, in my opinion, and people don't like it when I say this, I think Dan Hurley's the best coach in all of college basketball. I've just been extremely impressed with everything he's done. He's one of those guys where even if he had just a court full of 3 stars, I do think that if you give him time to prepare, he can get the job done. And so this is a matchup that is not ideal, but notice the words I said, not ideal. I did not say impossible. Why? Because of what Brad and this Illini team has shown this year. They've shown that, hey, going into games, I don't think many people would say that Brad Underwood was a better coach than Kelvin Sampson. Well, Brad Underwood outcoached Kelvin Sampson. I'm not sure many people would say that Brad Underwood is a better coach than Ben McCollum. And, well, Brad Underwood outcoached Ben McCollum. And I'm not talking about program building. I'm talking about strictly X's and O's. And that's where Brad usually doesn't have the advantage. And yet he did on those particular days. And that's why, granted, I think Dan Hurley's the best coach in the country. But that I don't have that sense of dread that I've had in years past. This is not going to be a game preview for it yet, because I'm always honest with you guys, right? Like, the result literally just happened maybe 20, 25 minutes ago. Just like I'm going to tell you now about how this Illini team is far different than the team that was back in November. The same could maybe be said about this UConn team. I focus on Illini basketball, okay? So I've got to catch up on UConn. I've got to talk to UConn beat writers and people, content creators who cover the team. And, maybe I'll probably release an interview or two, a preview or two this upcoming week, and then have a full in-depth preview right before the game. But what I wanted to do is, again, Illinois has lost the previous 2 matchups, right? But what I wanted to do is basically, let's just take a look at how different that team was. What I'm going to do is pull up the box score from that November 28th matchup, and let's just go over it. Let's take a look at the minutes. Let's just because I remember how differently that team was playing. And let's just kind of enjoy this together, and maybe you'll see why I'm not necessarily concerned that Illinois lost by, I think it was 13 points in the previous matchup for the 2. Okay, so I'll bring that box score up right now. All right, the box score is up for those of you guys watching on YouTube. For those of you who are listening to me on audio, I sincerely appreciate you. We're actually up 3x on the downloads that we get on the audio side compared to last year. Thank you all so much. Again, please, if you can, leave a 5-star review. That's really going to help this channel out. And if you're watching this on YouTube, go find me on your favorite audio platform. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I'm on all of those. Okay, so first thing that sticks out to me, of course, the 2 names I'm going to look at first are the 2 current Illini best players, correct? The freshman, Keaton Wagler, David Mirkovic. I know there's going to be a discrepancy because, well, we didn't play through those 2 guys earlier on in the season, in particular at March. And if you take a look at these minutes, David Mirkovic in the first matchup, again, you can see UConn won that game 74-61. UConn at the time, that made them 6-1, and Illinois fell to 6-2. David Mirkovic played 18 minutes, and Keaton Wagler played 14 minutes. Tommy Avicic played 25. Stojakovic played 24. Kylan Boswell played 39. I do remember that game because that was the game where Kylan Boswell really showed up. And, in fact, if you take a look at the box score, for the most part, it looks like he's the only one that showed up. Ben Humrickhouse played 26 minutes. You had Jake Davis only playing 8 minutes. Is this a typo? You have Mihajlo Petrovic. He played 18 minutes in that UConn game, going 1 for 7, and you kind of got a glimpse of why maybe he didn't. Has he played 18 minutes combined since that game? Now that I think about it, I don't think so. But Brandon Lee played 11 minutes himself. So you see what I'm saying? I'm speaking to Illini fans right now that you lost by 13 points to this UConn team, but don't think that any of that is going to carry over to the matchup on Saturday. This current mode of this team, this mold of this team. You're talking about David Mirkovic, Keaton Wagler. Keaton, Keaton at this point has become, one of the best players in the entire country. During this time, he was a role player. He was just a guy on the basketball team. And then essentially a couple weeks after this, they handed Keaton the keys to the car, and we became the number one offense in the entire country. That's right. As of yesterday, Illinois took back the number one spot from Purdue. And I'm just not talking about just from the country. I'm talking about all time when it comes to offensive efficiency. And that's because of what Keaton Wagler can do and what David Mirkovic can do. And now that the offense runs through those guys, this is going to be a completely different team. And there's nothing really that Dan Hurley and his coaching staff can go back on from that particular tape and be like, hey, we can probably implement that. No, I think you got to throw all that out and basically start afresh, start brand new. And what have I always said on the show, in particular since the Big Ten tournament? I felt more upbeat. I felt more positive about. I know Illinois had lost 5 of 9 at the end of their schedule, regular season schedule, and the Big Ten tournament, but I'm like, you know what? I just want to get out of the Big Ten, and I want to play other teams because this team's very hard to game plan for. And I think we've kind of seen a glimpse why. Illinois has won by over 10 points in each of their matchups so far in March Madness. And it's because, as I said, this team is very hard to plan for. And the team that UConn's going to be playing on Saturday is far different than the team that they played in November. I'll be honest, the first impressions, I think we match up a little bit better against UConn than we would have against Duke. Duke, I just think, has more star players that I was kind of concerned about. But again, it doesn't matter, right? UConn took care of business against Duke. It's right now, I'm shocked. The line came out as Illinois -2.5. So your Fighting Illini are favored to get to the national championship game. Would I make Illinois favored? I don't necessarily know. I believe coming into this game, Illinois was the KenPom number 4. UConn was the KenPom number 9. And if we're being honest, Illinois has played a little bit better than UConn as of late. But both teams had 3-point issues in their previous Elite 8 games. So we'll see. Maybe it's going to come down to which team doesn't have those 3-point issues and can make their baskets.
The tournament is here, one of the best times of the year. Brackets, buzzer beaters, upsets, it's non-stop action from tip to final cutdown. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a way to stay in the action all tournament long. Here's how it works. You can get up to $300 back in bonus bets every single day for 10 days. That means 10 chances to stay involved throughout the entire tournament. You can mix it up however you want. Games, futures, or same-game parlays for even bigger payouts. It's perfect for the tournament because every day there's something new. Different matchups, new storylines, and more ways to get involved as the bracket unfolds. So visit FanDuel.com to sign up today. That's FanDuel.com to get in on the action. Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. Arizona went into halftime Saturday down 7 to Purdue, but then outscored the Boilermakers by more than 20 in the second half to make the Final Four. Leif Thulin now looks ahead to Indianapolis on Locked On Wildcats.
I think these are the best 2 teams in the country, and it's not just because they made the Final Four and Duke did not. I have believed all season long that Arizona and Michigan are 1A and 1B. I think that Duke was a step below because they were so dependent on one single player, and Arizona and Michigan have elite depth, but also NBA talent on their roster, and you could argue more NBA talent, and I would argue that. These are the 2 most talented rosters in the country. They're very well coached, and they're both enormous and elite on offense and on defense. I am a little bit bummed that this game isn't the title game, but I adore that we get to see it. This is just the 5th time, as a college basketball fan, just the 5th time ever that 2 teams have met in the Final Four with 35-plus wins. And this one's even more impressive because it's the Final Four and it's not the championship, meaning there's 1 fewer time to try to get that 35th win. So the hype is real. It's palpable. It's awesome. And as soon as the bracket came out, I felt pretty confident we would see this matchup. I mentioned the bracket overview. I felt like Michigan had the best draw of anyone. I thought it was annoying that Arizona was on the same side as Michigan because, frankly, I would have rather played Duke, even though Duke beat Michigan. The other part about this is I think Arizona had a better resume than Duke, and Duke was the number 1 overall seed. But you know what? Doesn't matter now. I'm excited to see this matchup. Like I said, I wish it were the final game of the season because I think it deserves to be that. But the hype is real. These 2 teams are the best teams in the country, and in my opinion, the best teams to play in a Final Four and the most equally matched teams to play in a Final Four in quite some time. I think the only other game recently that's kind of had this appeal where I'm like, oh yeah, these are the best 2 teams in the country by far, and they're going to meet in a Final Four, and I felt confident throughout the year, would be Baylor and Gonzaga. And that was in 2021. But the thing is, I felt more separated those 2 teams than these 2. I was all in on Baylor that year. I thought their ball pressure was unbelievable. I thought Gonzaga didn't have quite the testing, the seasoning that Baylor did by playing the Big 12. Arizona and Michigan play more similarly than those 2 teams, are built more similarly, in my opinion, have a more similar level. These 2 teams, while they both embody modern basketball with size and just modern and taking apart analytics and deciding, yeah, this is how we're going to maximize our output with analytics, they both embody it. They both have up-and-coming coaches who are kind of new to their program, and they do all those things well, but they approach it differently. And I'm so excited to see that. Both the teams are enormous. Both are elite on offense and defense, but they have a different approach on how to defend and how to score. Philosophically, they are very different, but they have the same roster recruiting and building of a roster pitch. They're going to be huge at every position. They're going to play fairly quickly. Arizona and Michigan are separated by a smidgen according to the analytics, and they're built very similarly according to the analytical profiles. Firstly, they're both massive. Defensively, they're even better than they are offensively, where both are top 10. They both have multiple bigs, and they have a nice mix of new faces that's not so typical. Arizona, of course, their starting lineup has 3 freshmen. Usually that's a huge storyline going into March. Oh, this team can't win because they're built on freshmen. Well, Koa Pete and Braden Burries in the Sweet 16 had 23 and 21. Burries with 23, Pete with 21. Koa led all scorers with 20 in the Elite Eight, got the most outstanding player of the region. Burries was honored, of course, as well. And then there's Yaxel, who's 24, but he's new to Michigan. Adai Mara from UCLA, new to Michigan. Morez Johnson from Illinois, new to Michigan. And then, of course, you have some holdovers like Krivas and Bradley. And in Michigan's case, not too many holdovers. Amari Burnett's that have been there for a little bit. But there are veterans on the team, on that team that make them formidable. It's a nice mix. You don't see that too much in college basketball where there's a mix of how this team is comprised. And I think what the benefit of NIL is, you can pay for a team with great depth. You can pay for a team that resembles exactly how you want to coach it. And both these teams have rosters that embody how these coaches want to play. And it embodies current modern basketball, and they're very hard to beat. That's why these teams have been the best throughout the season. Usually there's more ebbs and flows. These 2 have been the best all season long, and it's a joy that they get to meet. This is how similar these teams are. Arizona is 0.6 points per 100 possessions better on offense, and Michigan is 0.6 points per 100 possessions better on defense. Basically, dead even. Michigan scores 49% of their points from 2, 32 from 3, shooting 37% from 3, and they shoot a lot more threes than Arizona does. Defensively, Michigan holds teams to a nation's best effective field goal percentage, holding teams to 31% from 3 and 44% from 2. Arizona is right up there on defense. And to me, the way I'd kind of boil it down for you in terms of an overview, and this would be an unbiased overview. Obviously, I'm rooting for Arizona, and I've watched more Arizona. But to me, Arizona is the most consistent great team in the country. That their pendulum doesn't swing as far in either direction. That they're really good, but their bad doesn't really deviate. Michigan, I think, has the highest level of very good. When they're rocking and rolling, they're elite, and frankly, they are almost untouchable when they're rolling. However, they are more touchable on more nights than Arizona is. Arizona just wears teams down, and no one can stay with them for as long as 40 minutes is. And when Arizona's been healthy, they have not lost. They're extremely consistent. They are physically overwhelming. They have multiple guys that can get out and score. Michigan's similar in that regard. And even when Michigan hasn't been their best, they've eked out wins because, well, quite frankly, their best isn't always needed because they have an first-team All-American, Yaxel Landenberg. They have arguably a lottery talent and a big man who's one of the best rim protection in the country and also orchestrates their offense at 7'3" and Adai Mara. They have Morez Johnson, who in his own regard could be an All-American caliber player if he weren't flanked by 2 others. And that's their front court alone. They have multiple guards. They did lose a guard, LJ Grayson, and their depth has been thinned. But this team is a juggernaut. They just have days where their shots not falling as much. They still play the same way, and you can live and die by the three. And some days they're more vulnerable than others. We'll get to that in a little bit. But like I said, Arizona's the most consistent team this season, and they have a gear that they get to that very few can touch. Michigan has a gear that may even be better than Arizona's top gear, but their main gear doesn't quite go as fast as Arizona's. These teams are elite. And frankly, the only team I feared all season has been the Michigan Wolverines. Casey Jacobson from Fox I've had on a couple times, and each time he's told me the team he has to beat is the Michigan Wolverines since the beginning. And I've had Arizona, and now it's coming to fruition. The battle between the best teams in the country, and virtually, statistically, nothing separates the two.
The Thunder faced off against the Pistons last night and gave us an overtime thriller. OKC made a comeback late in the fourth to force OT and then beat Detroit with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's 47 points leading the way. Rylan Stiles has the recap on Locked On Thunder.
In this game, the Thunder had to win. They especially had to win when you look at San Antonio just before tip-off, really blowing out Chicago. And it was a game that everyone thought was going to be pretty easy for Oklahoma City. Yes, it's the second night of a back-to-back, but if you know the Pistons roster, you name them, they didn't play. If you know their names, they didn't play. Besides Asar Thompson, he was in that lineup. Jenkins was in the lineup. But other than that, the Pistons were down and out in this one. OKC, second night of a back-to-back, did not play J-Dub or iHeart. And in this scenario, you just have to survive and advance. I know that we're so enamored with the Spurs winning ways, but there's a reason why they haven't gained ground. The Thunder keep winning themselves, and they just had to keep winning today. They did so in a messy fashion, in a more dramatic fashion than many would have thought. But this was a game that the Thunder just could not keep control of, in the sense of getting it to a blowout situation, getting it to a game in which they for sure had it in hand. It's why they needed overtime. And a big part of that is their defense. And in particular, the offensive rebounding for Detroit kept them in this game the entire way through. Because you look at it, and the Thunder, even early on in this game, did a lot of things well besides shoot the three ball. And when they were up by 10 at the half, with less than 11 fewer shots than Detroit, with Detroit shooting 33% from the floor, you think of what that means. Up by 10 at the half, Detroit shot 11 more times, and they're shooting just 33%. OKC had to work twice, sometimes three times as hard as they usually do, on the second night of a back-to-back, just to be up double digits while keeping Detroit at 33% from the floor. Because they could get the initial stop. The Thunder could force that initial miss. But with Detroit dominating the offensive rebounding category and dominating the energy and hustle for a lot of this night, it was the second, third, and yes, at times even fourth shot that killed you from Detroit if you're Oklahoma City. And you couple that with a spotty at best shooting game. This was a dreadful shooting game from Oklahoma City, where especially in the second half where you saw some guys run out of gas. You saw Chet Holmgren be on E. You saw A.J. Mitchell. The gaslight was on for A.J. Mitchell in the second half, for as wonderful as he was in the first half. So an offense that wasn't exactly a masterpiece, right? It wasn't their magnum opus offensively in the first half. It faced a major setback by those two guys running out of gas and scoring the basketball, because outside of those two, it was only Shai who scored. And in the second half and overtime, it was literally only Shai that scored. I think that, you look at this team and they're very thankful, of course, to have SGA. So you combine the lack of energy, you combine the lack of rebounding in this game with the second chance opportunities from Detroit, with the possessions won by Detroit and the amount of shot attempts that they got up. It's no surprise that this team in Detroit, best in the East, this bona fide contender, was able to take this game to overtime. And Detroit threw some great counter punches, especially to start that second half. It was stacking stops. It was getting the hustle plays by saving basketballs, getting long rebounds, getting second chance points. The Pistons did it again by a 9-0 run in the fourth quarter. And that 9-0 run was really spurred on by the same issues: lack of shot making, lack of shot creation, and turnovers. This entered the realm in the second half. Way too many turnovers, on top of the fact that you weren't making shots, on top of the fact that you were not rebounding the basketball. And this game got into the danger zone, folks. I mean, Detroit on one possession had 4 shot attempts. at the 4-minute mark, officially in clutch time. And the Pistons extended their lead to 7 at the 4-minute mark. 7. And you're thinking to yourself, man, this might be what ends this 1-seed race, is dropping a game like this that you shouldn't. Because you everydayers know that's what I think is going to decide this thing. Does either side blink? And who blinks first? Who drops a game that they shouldn't lose? And that might hit your ear funny because you're thinking, well, Detroit's the best team in the East. Yeah, but not this version of Detroit. This was a punting Detroit Pistons squad. They punted on 3rd down even in this game. And yet they took it to overtime. But Shea by himself got it back to a 1-point game. And then things really heated up. JB Bickerstaff called his last time out. I mean, I think that this really paints the picture of how much the Pistons were dominating the rebounding category, because I don't even think that the stats paint as wide of a gulf as there was between these two clubs on the glass. JB Bickerstaff calls his last timeout of regulation to avoid a 5-second call with 0.6 seconds left on the shot clock in a tie game with 63 seconds left. And the reason that you do that, as opposed to giving away the dead ball turnover, knowing another possession is coming, knowing you can advance the ball, knowing you're going to need that timeout later on. The reason that you do that is if you're Detroit, if you can just simply rely on a baseline out of bounds play to get you a shot attempt, you feel great about your chances of getting that offensive rebound. And now you have the shot clock reset at 14. Now you have another chance to score. And now you can be in your money-making scenario for these current Pistons that played today. But to the Thunder's credit, that was a scenario where the Pistons actually got a great look from 3. And that 3 I thought was going to fall. It was a beautiful look, beautiful play by JB. But the Pistons did not get that offensive rebound. And then Shea hits clutch free throws. Paul Reed did the same. The ball found Alex Caruso wide open in the corner, and he missed it. And then SGA hits the shot that made the Paycom Center erupt. It was another signature shot. It was supposed to be another MVP moment. In the weeks and weeks of self-candidacy, of State of the Unions, they're going to the caucus in Iowa, for God's sake. Wemby, Luka. They're trying to campaign their way to the MVP award. They're advocating for the MVP award for themselves. This should have been the moment for Shea, and a long line of them recently, that you can hold up as why he's the MVP. And instead, it gets wiped away because they call a push-off on Shea. Now, this call is going to be the lead story around the NBA today, probably. I know that it was on Locked On NBA Game Night today. As for me, what I think of this play, you have to understand the context of everything. The first piece of context is Shea had already been called for a push-off in this game, an offensive foul in this game. Now, most crews just let it go. For 48 minutes, they let it go, much less in the biggest spot of the game. With the biggest shot, the biggest moment, the biggest play, they let it go. But this crew has told you, hey, we're looking for that. We're trying to get in on that, calling on the push-off. And I think that the contact generated by Shea on this push-off was marginal. I think that, if you're looking at the intent, if you're looking at the space created by the motion, if you're looking at those sort of things, you could get away with not calling it. But it is a judgment call. And where I'm not up in arms about this call, where I don't think that they definitively got it wrong, is that it is a judgment call, and Shea, from the ref's vantage point, fully extends his arm. And Shea is really, really good at doing this little chicken wing move where he doesn't necessarily fully extend the arm. In fact, depending on the ref's positioning, if they're behind the play, if they're the trail ref at the scores table, and you look at it from this shoulder, you can't even see this little wing move that he does to knock defenders off their spot. If he did that, he would have been good to go, and it would have been the moment. But that arm extended out, and that's where you've put the ball in the ref's court to be able to call it. To be able to call it. Now, do I think that every crew calls that? Do I think that that gets called again if it happens Thursday. In fact, you can look around the NBA today, and the Utah Jazz, I believe it was Cody Williams actually, did the exact same move and didn't get called for it. But that's the point. It is a gray area. It is up for interpretation, and this crew has proven they're going to call that tonight. So I don't think that that's a massively botched call. I think that you could have let it go. You could have let them play. I don't think that it influenced the shot whatsoever. I don't think that it influenced the defense either. But it is a judgment call. I wouldn't have called it. But I can't sit here and tell you that had that shot gone in, I believe it was Sasser, and had the Thunder lost, that this would have been a critical inflection point. What would have been the inflection points at that pace would be everything we've already talked about. That the Thunder even put themselves in a position to need saving in a game like this.
The tournament is here, one of the best times of the year. Brackets, buzzer beaters, upsets, it's non-stop action from tip to final cutdown. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a way to stay in the action all tournament long. Here's how it works. You can get up to $300 back in bonus bets every single day for 10 days. That means 10 chances to stay involved throughout the entire tournament. You can mix it up however you want. Games, futures, or same-game parlays for even bigger payouts. It's perfect for the tournament because every day there's something new. Different matchups, new storylines, and more ways to get involved as the bracket unfolds. So visit FanDuel.com to sign up today. That's FanDuel.com to get in on the action. Welcome back to the Big Six in 60. The Hawks lost to the Celtics in Boston last Friday, but Atlanta returned the favor and handed Boston a loss when the two teams met again Monday night. Deshaun Tate recaps the win on Locked On Hawks.
Huge, big-time win by the Atlanta Hawks on tonight. 112-102, 10-point victory. Whenever you can beat a team in the Eastern Conference by double digits, it's always a beautiful thing. Man, how about that? At State Farm Arena, starting to play games at home. Let's just completely forget about the whole narrative about the Atlanta Hawks playing the easy schedule and all that. During the time when they have the easy schedule after the All-Star break, they're able to rack up some wins, and this is obviously a big part of one of them, albeit also at home, I remind you, an area or a department, a location of which they haven't always played their best brand of basketball. That narrative is now changing all of a sudden as they are certainly on a roll and finally playing some home games the way that they were playing some road games. Obviously, on tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the co-MVPs, if that's worthy, if that's even a such thing on the evening, as well as some of the X factors in place. Doing a little bit of grading the Atlanta Hawks based off of some of the keys to victory that I thought that I think that, some things they needed to accomplish and make sure that that was under their belt, the kind of energy that they needed to approach the game with in order to add a number to the left side of the result column, and much, much more. So let's go ahead and dive right on into things. Wow, big time game. Big time energy. Not nearly as many Boston fans I noticed in the house on tonight. They tend to kind of travel very well, and obviously with Atlanta being a melting pot and everything else, for so many different teams, it was just good to see that we were packed out in red on tonight. And I just thought that it was one of those games that was instrumental, and I was very clear about this the other night in a game against Sacramento, and I want to make sure I hold on to this. I'll own it every single time that I have the opportunity to, is that I was disappointed in the performance against the Sacramento Kings. The lack of defensive effort just really didn't put a stamp on the win the way I thought that they should have. I get it. Everybody out, it's a professional team. Everybody out there is professionals, ... blah, blah, blah. But what they did is they went out there and took care of business. I was a little bit concerned, curious to know how the Atlanta Hawks would fare against a team that they've already lost to within, the last 7 days or something like that. But even more so after coming off of a disappointing win, if there's even a such thing, where I recall saying on the postcast just 48 hours ago that this was a game against the Sacramento Kings that I really, really believed that the Atlanta Hawks needed to treat as if it was a loss, if they were going to come out with the right type of mentality. Playoff one, albeit that it was going to take, maybe not a Herculean effort or anything like that, but certainly a different type of mode or a different type of mental to approach and go out there and get your revenge, the sweet revenge, the big payback, if you will. And so, they did a lot of really good things. Obviously, there's going to be room for improvement on a few different things, but I think the first thing is the fact that from a true shooting percentage standpoint, they outscored Boston in every facet of the game. They shot better from the field. They shot better from three. They shot better from the free throw line. And I think held Boston to like under 70% from the line, which is fantastic. I don't know if there's a such thing as holding another team to under that amount. That's kind of the other team just not making free throws. But I like to think with the, what is it called? The 6th man or 12th man or whatever it is that we have up in the stands, that played a major part. And they always do a fine job of doing some really good trolling of their own and stuff like that too. So obviously that was clearly a big part of what the Atlanta Hawks had accomplished. Kept the turnovers low. Know that they really, really needed to do such things because they haven't been necessarily a team that have been taking care of the basketball all that well. And then, of course, they pretty much just about met the assist total. I think they had 27 on tonight. They lead the NBA first place with about 30 of those. So I think between those three things, shooting the ball, turnovers, they didn't out-rebound Boston the way I would have liked them to, especially without Jason Tatum in the lineup, who people may say, well, he's not a rebounder. Well, he had 12 of them the last time on the last outing. So, of course, that can always be beneficial if the Hawks, because everybody knows I love to go and pull up the rebounding, especially the offensive rebounding stats. So they didn't get a chance to do that. But anytime you don't out-rebound a team, which is a huge key piece to being able to win a basketball game, and you didn't have more than the opposition and still win the game, I think that's always a plus. Let's jump into our players of the game before we talk about a couple of the other key things that I thought that the Hawks needed to do to win this game, because it's debatable. I think the player of the game is debatable. I got players of the game on tonight. Let's jump right on into it right now.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
So we got two. Let's go ahead and throw them up here on the board because I'm really kind of curious to know where you guys, and feel free to jump into the comment section. I see that that's already running rampant right now. So feel free to jump on into that. Who you think the player of the game should have been, who it is for you, whatever, what have you, if there's such thing for co-MVPs, because that's the way I'm personally going to go with it on tonight. First things first, let's go with this guy, Onyeka Okongwu, who, there have been some games over the course of the last week and a half. Obviously there was a game that he didn't play the other night, but him coming back, I think, was instrumental for this team on the win on tonight, obviously, as it was for Dyson Daniels and Jonathan Kuminga. But Onyeka Okongwu hadn't been playing nearly as well, which I think everybody's entitled to a night or so, as he had been previous to that. But certainly did himself quite a fantastic, fine job tonight to get himself at least partial, if nothing else, the player of the game on tonight. 20 points shooting fit. This is not a typo, people. You see it down here on the ticker. That is not a typo. 20 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 block, 50% from the field, 40% from three. 100% from the free throw line. Now, everybody loves talking about this 50, 40, 90 thing and how cute that is and everything else. And I think that that's great. Hardly ever, very rarely do I think that you see it a lot of times with centers. That's something that we're having a conversation about on tonight for Onyeka Okongwu, why he deserves to be in this conversation. Not only a 50, 40, 90 on the night, but a 50, 40, 100 on the night. I think that pretty much lets you know everything that you'll need to know in terms of why he is in the conversation. But the one department or the one stat that I didn't mention while we're talking about Onyeka Okongwu is this one right here. The 3 steals. I don't know the last time that Onyeka Okongwu had 3 steals. Maybe somebody can go and check it out. I'll check the comment section here in a second, but didn't have enough time to look it up. But 3 steals for Onyeka Okongwu, our center. If not only when is the last time he's done it, if he's ever done it, but when is the last time that we ever had a center that recorded 3 steals? May not have to go back that far, but because we do got some pretty handsy, front court players, if you will, centers specifically. But I'm not sure that I can say that it has been all that recent. So I got to go back and stat check that. But that stat right there, the 3 steals took the cake for me.
The tournament is here, one of the best times of the year. Brackets, buzzer beaters, upsets, it's non-stop action from tip to final cutdown. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a way to stay in the action all tournament long. Here's how it works. You can get up to $300 back in bonus bets every single day for 10 days. That means 10 chances to stay involved throughout the entire tournament. You can mix it up however you want. Games, futures, or same-game parlays for even bigger payouts. It's perfect for the tournament because every day there's something new. Different matchups, new storylines, and more ways to get involved as the bracket unfolds. So visit FanDuel.com to sign up today. That's FanDuel.com to get in on the action. Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. LSU basketball fired Will Wade in 2022, but now he's back in Baton Rouge after stops at McNeese State and NC State. Matt Moscona has more on a welcomed but still a little awkward reunion.
All the Will Wade rumblings became noise, became actuality. Told you 2 things, 2 reasons why Will Wade would leave NC State to come back to LSU. Number 1, alignment. And I even told you that word. He was going to use that word a ton in his press conference. And I'm talking about from Governor Jeff Landry to board president Lee Mallett to university system president Dr. Wade Roos to Heath Schroyer coming over from McNeese. That alignment was key. The other was the LSU fans, the people that supported him during his most trying times. As basketball coach and professionally. Well, Will Wade wasted virtually no time whatsoever at his introductory press conference discussing those very things. And let's go in order. Let's start with that alignment. Now, remember, I told you, top down, Jeff Landry, Lee Mallett, Wade Roos, Heath Schroyer. Funny how Will Wade mentioned them.
There's just a ton of folks involved to make this happen. I want to first off thank our governor, Jeff Landry. I want to thank our wonderful LSU board, many of who are here today, and our great chairman, Lee Mallett. I want to thank Dr. Roos, who I've worked with before. We're going to work well together again, get that alignment. We've got Heath Schroyer here, same chain of command as Doc likes to say, and certainly our wonderful athletic administration and everybody involved in the athletic administration. Their belief in me and the belief in me that this is the right time to come home will never be forgotten. And make no mistake, this is home. I wasn't born in Louisiana, but Louisiana's home for me, and me and my family. And so,
tugging at the heartstrings, man, smart guy. But you know what? I believe him. And if you've lived in Louisiana, if you're from Louisiana, if you went to school in Louisiana, you understand that component of it. Like, it's the thing we talk about all the time about this state. Y'all, we are different. We are, and we know it. I know this. I see all of the impressions. There's so many of you watching right now who are Ole Miss fans from when Lane Kiffin left Ole Miss to come to LSU. NC State fans who now have followed this show since Will Wade jumped, and this isn't going to make sense to you. And I understand that. This is a weird place. It is different. Lane Kiffin coined the just different thing, and it's not a funny slogan. It's true, even with relation to the rest of the Gulf South. Look, you can drop somebody randomly, boom, in parts of rural Mississippi or rural Kentucky or rural Alabama or rural Georgia or the panhandle of Florida, and a lot of it looks, feels, sounds, acts exactly the same. Now, look, every state has its own culture. I don't mean to be dismissive of that, but there's so much of it that feels the same. When you get into Louisiana, where we spell things differently, we talk differently, we eat weird things, all of it, like, you know where you are. And we take a lot of pride in that in this state. And some people get it and some people don't. And if you don't, it's probably not going to go great for you here. But if you do and you embrace it, the people here will love you forever. And it doesn't happen for everybody. It didn't happen for Brian Kelly. It clearly happened for Will Wade when he was here at LSU and when he was at McNeese. And for him and his wife Lauren and their daughter Caroline, that they set that hook, man. And you heard him say it. Like, this is another interesting soundbite that sort of explains. It's 14 seconds, but this tells you the story.
I know people have been talking about us a little bit. I understand I'm not for everybody. And we understand also that LSU isn't for everybody. But one thing we both understand is I'm for LSU and LSU's for me. And make no mistake about that.
So for Will Wade, you wonder why he came back. All the past 2, 3, whatever it's been, weeks, there's 2 reasons. Number one is the alignment he just talked about, because in order to have success, you have to have the resources. Well, how do you get the resources? Well, from the governor to the board chairman to the president of the university, athletic administration, all those people are pulling in the same direction for the resources in this state for a common goal. Yeah, you can achieve great things. And number 2 is the people. And, you know, I when Will Wade finished his press conference on Monday at the Maravich Center, the first thing he did is he left the dais and walked over to the student section, the students that were there. And he was high-fiving them and taking pictures and all that stuff. And Will Wade's, I was one of the last people that left the PMAC on Monday. And Will Wade must have stayed for an hour, hugging, embracing, talking to, greeting everyone, from board members to boosters to fans to people he's known here from the time he showed up in 2017. And it was the way I describe it is, imagine your best friend from college or high school, and life goes on and your paths diverge and you don't see each other every day or talk every day. But 5 years down the line, you know, you end up in the same place, you see each other, and your reaction is big, wide-eyed, and you're going to give this big embrace to that person. You're going to hug long, because it doesn't matter how long you've been apart. You have a shared life experience that you can't let go of, no matter where your life takes you. Will Wade had that experience 100 times on Monday at the PMAC. And it explains why he came back. I don't expect, if you're an NC State fan and you found the show today, I don't expect you to understand the LSU connection, but that part of it, the human part of it, maybe that makes sense to you. And you may not like Will Wade and how he left, and I get that. But the human element of that, of someone who loves a place and the people and embraces it and has a chance to go back to them, that component of it on a human level has to make sense at least a little bit. And that's what's rooted in this, because on a basketball level, it doesn't make sense. I've said this a million times. NC State is a better basketball job than LSU. That is objectively true. They've won a national title. They care. Basketball ranks ahead of football in their hierarchy. That'll never be the case at LSU, ever. Will Wade could win 100 national championships in a row. People here will never love that basketball program the way they do the football program. But they embrace Will Wade and his family, and that's why Will Wade is back. Now, Will Wade also, of course, never one to shy away from humor and jabs, had this to say.
You know, we're coming back to make history. We're going to make history one way or the other. We're coming back, like Dr. Roos said, to try to hang a banner, win a national championship, or I'm going to be the first coach fired from the same school twice. But one way or another, we're going to make history.
And the crowd was raucous, and they loved every bit of it. Now, he was also asked, Will was, about the perception, right? The way he left NC State and him being sort of painted as a villain. And it's something that at this point in his life, Will Wade clearly just doesn't care.
I long ago quit worrying about my perception. So that part doesn't bother me too much. Look, here's what I'm going to say. I'd like to focus more on what's going on at LSU. NC State was great to me. I think some of the things have been mischaracterized on how I left, but I'm not going to get into I learned long ago, I'm not going to get into a back and forth on all of that. The people who need to know. And look, everybody has to, when there's a situation like this, everybody has to cover has to cover. Let's put it that way. And so I'm at peace with how I left. I'm at peace with what we did. And, look, I mean, they're pretty mad for a coach they didn't think was very good. So,
and he had to get the jab in at the end. A friend of mine who is a very, very successful business person. I won't tell you his name. If I did, you would know exactly who it was. But this person told me one time that the easiest decisions in life are the best decisions. And I think this was an easy decision for Will Wade. And that may not sit well with NC State folks or anybody else nationally, but it sits well with Will and Lauren Wade and Caroline and Dr. Wade Roos and Lee Mallet and Governor Jeff Landry and everybody else involved. And for that, it was the best decision for them. And we'll see if it's the best decision for LSU. Only time will tell, because Will Wade has to win and win big in order to make that decision justified.
The tournament is here, one of the best times of the year. Brackets, buzzer beaters, upsets, it's non-stop action from tip to final cutdown. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a way to stay in the action all tournament long. Here's how it works. You can get up to $300 back in bonus bets every single day for 10 days. That means 10 chances to stay involved throughout the entire tournament. You can mix it up however you want. Games, futures, or same-game parlays for even bigger payouts. It's perfect for the tournament because every day there's something new. Different matchups, new storylines, and more ways to get involved as the bracket unfolds. So visit FanDuel.com to sign up today. That's FanDuel.com to get in on the action. Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. The Heat finished on a 16-2 run in the final 3 minutes of the game to take a win over the 76ers last night. Locked On Heat goes over the comeback.
119-109 is your final score. Heat move a game closer to getting back into that 7-8 part of the play-in tournament. And they won this game, David, I thought, for two reasons. Really two things. Defense and pace. After two horrible defensive games, the Heat got back to playing elite level defense in this one. They held the 76ers to an offensive rating of 110.1. That is an awesome mark. And specifically down the stretch in the fourth quarter, they really locked down, allowed just 22 points in that fourth quarter. Just scored only 28 points themselves in the fourth quarter. So they really won this thing with defense, but also the pace really stood out. 30 fast break points on just 6 live ball turnovers. That's really hard to do. And what stood out to me, especially early in this game, was Miami just getting out and running off of stops, not necessarily live turnovers, but off of stops and off of makes too. A lot of credit to Davion Mitchell for, I think, helping start all of that early in the game. But you can also tell because of this matchup, they wanted to outrun Joel Embiid, not allow him to get back on defense specifically. And so, look, on the second night of a back-to-back, a place that the Heat have been really good this season. They came out with more effort. They came out with a defensive intensity that was lacking Sunday against Indiana and Friday against Cleveland. And they got back to their identity, which was pushing the pace and just outrunning teams, to your point in the cold open. I thought the Heat won this game for those two things, defense and pace.
Yeah, inexplicably. Like, none of it makes any sense. They completely fall apart against the Pacers. Their defense was woeful. They just got outshot by a bad Pacers team. And then against a really hot shooting Sixers team that's been playing really well of lately. And Miami on the second night of back-to-back, the Sixers rested. And Miami just is like, you know what? We're going to go with a shortened rotation, only go 10 deep. 9 deep, actually. They went 9 deep in their rotation. No Norm Powell. And they're like, you know what? We're going to get back to this great elite defense, and we're just going to outrun the heck out of the Sixers. And that was unbelievable. Again, none of it makes any sense, and that's why this Heat team continues to be as confounding as any group I've ever covered before, because you're not sure what you're going to get. I know a lot of people are going to pick to, they're not particularly good, not particularly talented, all the different things, and I can't disagree with them, but nights like tonight showcase the fact that Miami can play really good basketball. And it's just as much a surprise as any, I think, when we see it. But to your point, they were phenomenal in those two aspects. And of course, they're still completely intertwined, too. Their defense leads to those fast break opportunities, and that kind of ignites their defense, and et cetera. So it's this really great cycle of kind of feeding into one another where they defend at a high level and they get these opportunities to ignite a fast break and go in transition buckets and things of that sort. But they were really good. They were attacking the paint very aggressively. 60 paint points to just 42, I think, for the Sixers. They got second chance opportunities. They easily crushed them on the boards, too. They did a really good job of controlling all those little aspects that helped them get the opportunities to put up more points, to be able to keep Philadelphia from scoring. So many different things that they did so well tonight, and their energy, their pace. Again, inexplicably, on the second night of back-to-back, you don't expect the team to play with that kind of energy, but they were clearly the much more engaged team. There were a couple of spurts here and there where Embiid picked it up, especially in the fourth quarter, and where Tyrese Maxey had a couple of shots here and there. VJ Edgecombe had a couple of shots. Paul George. Everybody seemed to have their opportunity. Adam Bona wound up making a big impact for the Sixers, too, off the bench, at least in my opinion. But nothing was as consistent as Miami's just constantly attacking the paint, being able to get those defensive possessions, those key stops, especially down the stretch, and to be able to ignite those fast opportunities. They were down 107-103 with like 3.5 minutes left to go, and then they get a key stop. Bam scores. 2 quick 3-pointers from Tyler Hero on back-to-back possessions. That was phenomenal. Like, he did not I think he might have had the ball in his hands for like a second total between those 2 shots. He was phenomenal. Really, really good. Yeah. He just shot it, and it was really good in rhythm. Knocked us down and just helped Miami kind of extend the lead there and kind of build it from there. I mean, they went on a 16-2 run to close the game. That was ridiculous. 107-103, final score 119-109. So they did a phenomenal job of stopping Philadelphia, forcing them into turnovers as well, and doing a really good job of getting their points as well.
I'm glad you bring up that final stretch, but before I give you my notes on that, one last stat on Miami's transition play. They added, and Cleaning the Glass does a great job of tracking this stuff, they added 7.2 points per 100 possessions more to their offense just off of transition, off of live rebounds, off of the defensive rebounds. So to your point, defense powering that transition stuff. That's the difference. In this game, it would have been the difference between if you just wipe away those points off of the defensive, the transition points off of the live rebounds. You take those away, the Heat would have gone from like the 3rd best offensive rating in the league to 26th. That's how important their running off of defensive rebounds was in this game. They blitzed the Sixers off those defensive rebounds. But I'm glad you brought up that final stretch too, because when I look at the turning point of this game, it was right there, right? So I look specifically, Joel Embiid gets called for that illegal screen.
Yeah.
And then Nick Nurse, who does almost as much complaining as Joel Embiid does.
Tough to say, but I think you're not wrong.
Right? Like I was like, all coaches complain to the refs, but Nick Nurse does a little bit extra. He puts a little bit more sauce on it, just like Joel Embiid does. They kind of feed off of each other, I think. Yeah. So anyway,
never them committed a violation in their whole lives.
No. And by the way, Joel Embiid with maybe the most egregious foul baiting thing I've ever seen in the first quarter. It looked like he was getting defended by Davion Mitchell, and he just kind of hops while Mitchell is standing in front of him, essentially.
Yeah.
And then flails and tries to get the call. You know what it looked like? It looked like Super Mario jumping over a turtle to me. That's what it looked like. And then he tried to get like the foul call, and I know that he was panned widely on social media and deservedly so. Anyway, so he gets called for the illegal screen there, throws his hands up, can't believe it. It was an illegal screen. In fact, they called it twice because Nick Nurse challenged it, and then they said, yep, it was still an illegal screen on Pelle Larsson. Calls back a Tyrese Maxey 3. Could have put the Sixers up at that point 6 with just over 4 minutes to go. Instead, Sixers lose the challenge. They get and it's still just a 3-point game. Tyler Hero on the next 76ers possession strips Joel Embiid, and that leads to a Wiggins layup. Embiid gets called for the goaltending there. The Heat down just 1 at that point. Bam gets a putback, a wide open putback. Embiid misses the box out altogether, and it is obviously his man. Embiid misses the box out and then looks at his teammates like, "Who's going to box this guy out?" I'm like, "Dude, you guys play the same position. You are." Yeah, that was your job. And so I felt like Embiid kind of melted down a little bit after that illegal screen, and I think that really led to a lot of what Miami was getting off of that, whether it was the hero strip on Embiid to the Wiggins layup or the Bam putback on the missed box out. Embiid misses another jumper, and then against Miami's zone, which was a huge factor in this game, especially in that fourth quarter. That leads to that Tyler Hero three-pointer, the first one that you were talking about. Heat go up 1 with 2 minutes, 20 seconds to go, and then Hero comes right back with another 3. The Heat go up 111-107 with 2 minutes to go, and Miami has all the momentum at that point. That is right in the middle of that run that you mentioned to close the game. And what really stood out to me was that Tyler Hero was 1 of 8, I think, from three-point range prior to making those back-to-back threes. Just unreal confidence. That to me was the turning point in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, Embiid was good. Like he had 10 points in the fourth, but he did kind of melt down there. And I think that Hero steal kind of like, I guess that he wasn't expecting that sort of challenge. Maybe he expected to get a foul call because, well, that's Joel Embiid, and he did think he was going to get to the line on that. And I you know what? Who cares? You could go listen to Locked On Sixers for more analysis on how Joel Embiid fell apart there. But for
but it was
Miami,
important,
though,
right? Like I thought
it was.
I thought
they
that
got under
Miami's
his skin a little
zone,
bit.
they did, and that was good, right? Like Tyler Hero starts trash talking with that Mbona at the end of the third quarter, and then he kind of maybe lights a fire in him. We'll talk about halftime, which was apparently a very big deal. We'll talk about that later in the show. But I was interested, like going back to that zone. Every time Embiid would have it in that triple threat spot that he loves so, and he's so dangerous in that triple threat spot, it would be Tyler Hero a lot of time helping off the corner and pinching and just crowding him a little bit. And something Embiid has seen a million times in his career, but he just seemed to have a problem with it tonight.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. Credit to Miami. I can't. None of this makes any sense. Like I know I should have some more thorough analysis here, but like Miami looks so bad against a really bad team on Sunday, and then tonight against a good 76ers team that's played so much better of late. Not as quite to the same level as the Charlotte Hornets, but they've been on a tear. And Miami just totally took them apart and played with incredible urgency, intensity, energy, did all the little things and wound up beating them pretty handily. And it was a good, fun game too, because I think it was back and forth for most of it. And then towards the end there, when Embiid was starting to catch fire a little bit, I thought, oh, okay, this might be it. Miami might not have another comeback. And sure enough, they did not get let down. Tyler Hero really picked up everything. And Bam Adebayo did a fantastic job offensively, but also defensively. Like his rebounding was so key to Miami getting those extra possessions too.
That's all for today's Big 6 and 60. If you follow basketball, football, or college sports, the Big 3 and 30 has a half hour on the biggest news in the NFL, the NBA, and on campus, going up every weekday just like this one. Just search the Big 3 and 30 NBA, the Big 3 and 30 NFL, or the Big 3 and 30 college, wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 6 in 60.